I'm speaking to Ralph, who had not just one Bigfoot sighting, but two at the same time about 22 years ago. Hello, Ralph. How are you doing?
All right. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for contacting the page, and I know you've already talked to Jack Barnes about this, but let's do kind of a quick recap of this time frame. You were in Colorado back in 1990. Tell us what you saw.
Okay. Well, I was driving over the Dallas Divide, which is on Highway 62 south of the town of Ridgeway. And 62 is a major trunk state highway. It's 2 lanes. And it kind of does some big, lazy switchbacks up the north side of the Dallas Divide. But once you get to the summit, it straightens out pretty good. There's just a gentle curve, and I just passed the sign that says Summit. And I went around a gentle curve, and there's something immediately illuminated in the brights of my headlights. And at first, when I saw it, I thought a truck had dumped its load of earth and dead grass. Because, it seemed like the grass was kind of waving in the wind, and, but it had a reddish color to it. But as I got a little bit closer, I realized there's no way this is dirt, because I realized it was moving of its own volition. It was alive. And, I had it full on in the brights of my headlights. I mean, there was no ambiguity for me. When I got close enough, I realized there's only one creature this can be. Now,
How big do you think it was?
Well, I've got a pretty good measurement of that. When I was standing upright, I'm 6 feet tall.
Okay.
And when I'm standing upright by the truck that I had at the time, which was a 76 Chevy Blazer, full size, because of the lift that the truck had, my head would have been right about towards the middle or lower half of the driver's side window.
Okay. Yep.
So this truck was pretty tall. When you open the door, you had to grab the seat and the steering wheel and climb in.
Yeah, climb into it. Sure.
It wasn't like you stepped into it, if you know what I'm saying. I mean, I had 3/4-ton springs and axles on this truck, so that it was unusual for a Chevy Blazer in that regard. And, it was intended for some pretty serious abuse. And so I know how tall this thing was. Seated on its rear end, it was as tall as me.
And you're over 6 feet.
Well, I'm 6 feet.
You're at 6 feet.
Yeah.
And it was seated. To describe the position, it was on the side of the road, sitting in what kind of position?
Now, did you see those pictures that
you sent us some great sketches, which I'm sure Jack will post along with this interview. But yeah, it looked like it was kind of, I'll describe it as sitting on its rear end with its knees bent.
Yes.
And its arms kind of outstretched or kind of supporting itself, right?
Yeah. Now, imagine if you're sitting on your rear on the floor, okay, and you just fold your knees up in front of your chest and hug them with your arms, okay? That's the essential position, except with a difference, okay, being that this creature was not hugging its knees. Instead, its arms were perfectly parallel with its shins, which is something that a human can't do, by the way, and its arms were long enough so that it was able to place its palm flat on the pavement in front of its foot. It was a unique pose that I've never seen any creature do, and I've been 10 feet from grizzly bears. I've seen every large game animal that there is in the U.S. I'll just put it that way.
This is a big creature. Obviously.
This is a big creature, and the thing that struck me most about it is when I saw it and I realized that it was a creature. The first thing I did is I looked for a snout. You see what I'm saying?
Sense. Yeah, trying to rationalize what it really is.
Yeah. And, my brain's telling me, ape, but it wasn't. It wasn't anything with a snout, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, an ape isn't shaped like that. I mean, you think about a gorilla, that's an ape, okay?
Yeah.
an ape doesn't have legs like that. I mean, a gorilla doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But it was obvious that it wasn't a human in a monkey suit either. This thing was huge.
Did you get a look at its face? What was your angle?
Okay. This is something that has always struck me as bizarre about this experience, is that when I approached this, you know, I'm putting on my brakes pretty hard initially. I'm slowing down pretty dramatically because, you know, I've got to do something about this. And I was preparing to just veer around it, okay, because I'm thinking pile of dirt in the middle of the road, okay? And the drawing I produced, by the way, you'll notice that it's out of scale. The width dimension, the drawing doesn't look nearly as wide as it should be. It had a much wider width to it. It was leaned forward more to get its arm stretching over its knee and down to the pavement. But so it was wider than it was tall. So when you see initially this reddish pile in the street, it looked very much like a pile of dirt. Okay, except when I got closer, that was obvious. Okay, so anyway, when I realized it was alive, I'm like, I'm moving closer. Okay.
Yeah. Now you're creeping closer with your car.
Yeah,
your truck?
I brought the vehicle to a complete stop.
Okay.
Okay, so that I was close enough that I could see all of it from my position in the driver's seat, in my brights. Okay, so I'm going to make that at that time. I'm going to say that was probably about 15 feet from my position in the driver's seat to where it was actually seated. About that, maybe a little bit further. And okay, you asked if I saw its face, and the answer is no. This creature was faced absolutely perpendicular to the lane, so it's facing the side of the road, straight onto the side of the road. And it was shaking. It was shivering. You could see its respiration. It was breathing hard. I could see muscles rippling all over its body. That's what I thought was the wind initially when I first saw it. It wasn't wind that was moving the grass. It was muscles rippling underneath the hair. And its hair was wavy and long, with the color of kind of like an Irish setter.
Okay. Yeah, we've heard of red ones in the past, sure.
Yeah, and it varied. I mean, some of it was whiter, some of it was more reddish. You know,
you couldn't see the face, but give us any other details. And these are great details. But talk about, you mentioned the hair was kind of thin, and talk about the muscularness of this. Yeah,
it thinned out on its arms and legs a little bit, or it went more to white.
Okay.
Okay, and so it hung down on its legs and hung down a little bit off of its arms.
Okay.
Okay. I didn't do a very good job of depicting.
Oh, don't worry about the
I'm
drawing.
not much of an artist,
but
anyway. The other thing I noticed was that the way the hair behaved on its head, but then it came back to a kind of a peak where there was almost like a tuft of hair on back, like a cowlick. Okay? And, you know, I was struck by the flatness of the face. Other than the brow ridge, I could not make out a nose.
Okay. Interesting.
So no nose, no apparent...
Not a human type of profile.
No, I mean, there wasn't even any snout. There was a flatness to the front of the face, maybe a little bit of curvature, but no sense of mouth or anything. It was like somebody had put this cone, kind of semi-cone ball or something, but it was, part of the deal was the head seemed to be slightly ahead of the shoulders, and you know, I've seen this on a lot of accounts now, but certainly no neck. I mean, the shoulders were very high, you know, almost at ear level. Although I didn't see the ears either. There was just hair. You know, so it was like kind of this pointed, you know, shape rather than something that was really...
How about hands or feet? You get a good look at those?
Only the tops of them.
Okay.
And they were all hairy, thinned out a little bit on the fingers.
How long were you there, Ralph? At this point, you're
not long
to collect these details.
Okay.
You were there for what, a minute? Are we talking 30 seconds or?
I came to a full halt, And you got to understand, my mind, the thoughts in my mind have gone from something very leisurely, I'm looking forward to my experiences in Telluride the next day, to everything's moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I'm sure I wasn't there very long, but I had lots of thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, I had a camera. It was back behind me in a pack that was zippered, and the camera was attached to the pack. I was going to have to disconnect it. Okay, it was a film camera. This was 1990. There wasn't any digital stuff back then to speak of. So I had to think, okay, I've got to take my foot off the brake. I've got to put it in park. I've got to take my eyes off of this creature. I've got to turn around, reach back, pull this thing, undo 2 zippers, pull this thing out, disconnect the camera, okay? Then I've got to deal with the flash. If it goes off, I'm going to see the reflection of the inside of my windshield. I'm kind of into photography, so I thought about these things. That means that since it's in park, I'm going to have to roll down the driver's side window at the very least, lean out and take an actual picture from the outside in order to get this. And right about then, something else started kicking in, which was this creature, even though it has not moved from its pose, it has not turned to look at me, it's not acknowledged my presence in any way, it's clearly agitated. And
you said it was shaking.
Yeah.
Quivering,
like a shiver.
Yeah,
like
shivering.
A shiver. Like a really powerful shiver.
What time of year was it?
Well, I think the date was September 8th. It was the first Saturday in September.
How cold was it?
Not particularly cold.
Okay, so early autumn, but not very cold.
Yeah, well, late summer, really. I mean, you know, in Telluride, that area, you know, it's just a little bit too early for the aspens to start turning. So, I mean, they're really doing that more towards the end of September and into October. I've been out in Colorado a lot. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota.
So it wasn't shivering. So you're there, you're seeing it quiver, and then you at some point your thoughts catch up to you, and you say, Kenny, I'm going to keep driving, right? You decide to leave the scene.
Well,
or does it flee, or what happens then?
It did not acknowledge my presence by any motion other than the fact that it was clearly, I don't know, shivering, quivering, you know, just nervous, whatever the agitation was caused by, okay? But I had to think about the fact that, you know, a bear could take my blazer apart like a pop can. I mean, you know, there was a guy that took Harley Davidson into Custer State Park in South Dakota and got into a herd of buffalo and challenged a buffalo just by revving his engine and sitting there. The buffalo picked him and the bike up and threw it 10 feet.
Whoa.
Yeah, and we're talking a full-size Harley, okay? That's 800 pounds, okay? And I had
so
to
those
think
same kind of concerns are going through your mind.
Yeah, all of a sudden I'm thinking, this thing, I mean, its arms were as long as my legs and just as big around, okay?
Amazing.
Its thighs, I'm going to make its thighs out to be a good 18 inches in diameter at the hips, and probably about 2 feet long, and another 2 feet for the shins, okay? And it's already 6 feet tall. This thing is 10 feet tall, okay? Now this is all going through my head, okay? And I thought, you know, I could actually be in some physical danger here. This thing could probably flip the vehicle over. And there's a grade, okay, on one side of 62 right at that point, and it's, you know, on the right side of the road it goes up, on the left side of the road it goes down, okay? He could pick up the, I didn't question that he could either take the door off the side of my car or flip the vehicle over.
Yeah, right down the hill.
And, you know, none of these prospects sounded particularly appealing, and the idea of getting out, you know, it kind of gives you some trepidation.
You then decide to just drive on.
I let my foot off the brake, and you know, I had to aggressively steer, you know, to go around this thing. And so the transmission just, you know, the engine idling just pulled me past.
Yeah.
As it went by, you know, I got a view of its shoulders and neck. And the shoulders were extremely wide. I'm going to say about 4 feet.
Wow.
And you know, there's just this kind of little cone, hairy cone thing perched in the middle. From the rear, the head doesn't look that big. From the side, it looked a lot bigger. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Comes to a point, yeah.
But, and so I didn't really put gas on it until I was completely clear of it, and then I kind of headed down the road, and I'm going, you know, what in the hell what am I doing here, you know? And in exactly the same pose, facing exactly the same way, and if anything, even more agitated and shivering more than the first.
On the same side of the road, or
on
what?
The same side of the road.
Facing the same direction as the previous one.
Yeah, and you got to understand, these things are so big that they forced me to go into the other lane, because the first one, its rear end was 6 inches shy of the dotted line, okay? And its palms were no more than a foot from the side of the road. Okay, so you know.
So this one's more agitated. Is it the same color? The same?
The second
size?
one had the same coloration. And I got the impression through this, and I'm just going to give you my impressions, because I'm not going to explain them. Okay.
Yeah.
I got the impression that something was wrong. Okay. Now, certainly, you know, you're driving along, and you see a creature like this big, seated in the middle of the road, and it's not anything you ever see. Certainly, there's a wrongness about it. Okay.
At least an unusualness about it.
Just to be clear.
Yeah.
Okay. But I got the impression initially that something was wrong when I saw the first one. When I saw the second one, I got the impression that maybe what's wrong is this one's injured.
The second one.
Yeah. And then I thought, are they sending me a message? Are they seated here for a reason? The other line's ringing, but one of my employees will get it.
Okay.
Anyway.